What is going on? This is Michael Hacker with the Hacker Outdoors podcast. Today I'm joined by Brian and Joey, who discuss the intricacies of trying to find a daily driver that can act as an adventure vehicle, and Joey gives us an update and some tips on finding bass this season. If you like what you hear, please leave us a review, give us a like and a follow. As a heads up, we've also launched our new blog site at hackeroutdoors.wordpress.com. Check back for some short form writing and reviews on gear, travel, and everything else you'd love to hear about. Without further ado, let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
Cool. We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Hacker Outdoors podcast. I am joined today with Brian. Joseph is eating lobster cakes and prime rib, I believe. Looked quite delicious. He will be here momentarily. We are jumping in because we are behind schedule because Joe decided to have a feast for his mother's birthday. Happy birthday, Judy. I would like to say that that's not usually allowed, not on recording days, but we'll make an exception, I guess, maybe, perhaps. Brian's shaking his head. So welcome, Brian.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Well, I'm going to answer
Rocking
for
and
everyone.
rolling.
Rocking and rolling, baby. So, we were talking a little bit before I went and hit that record button here today, and we're talking about adventure vehicles. I was reading an article on, I don't remember if it was Adventure Magazine or something to that effect, and they were talking about a guy who was a Tundra, not a Tacoma owner. I think I sent you the article. And he was tired of it. He said that it was a vastly underpowered machine. He loved the idea of it because it looks cool, but it just missed marks in so many spots. Now, as an avid outdoorsman, you and I, or I should say, as we are avid outdoorsmen, we have always talked about getting Tacomas, and we just can't bring ourselves to spend the money on it, right? Even a used one, they just knock a couple $1,000s off of the brand new price. So not worth it, in my opinion, for something that's a little bit of a dog as far as power goes. And the guy in the article said that, he went to the only vehicle or company that he could think of that kind of checked off all his boxes, minus the fact that they didn't have a pickup, and that was Subaru. And you and I are both big Subaru guys. I wouldn't say that, I take that with a grain of salt. I never thought I would say that. I'm sure you probably would have never thought that as well for yourself. Maybe a WRX, but I have a Forester, you have a Crosstrek, and we've always talked a little bit about how we wish there was something a little bit different than them, right? Like when you look at these rally edition cars and trucks, they just look so sweet. But I did see today they're coming out with a wilderness sub brand. So it's going to be an Outback, a Forester version, and then a Crosstrek version. And these are a little bit off-road modified vehicles. It's going to be a sub-brand, like I said, so you can get this as, think Jeep Rubicon, right? But in the Subaru world, they look pretty cool from the spy photos. I'm not going to share that because I don't want them to be dinged, but what I will do is I will link to one of the stories in the show notes so you can take a look for yourself. I got to ask Brian, is that something that you would do? I know you're up for a new vehicle somewhat in the near future.
Yeah, so funny enough, I've been doing a lot of digital car shopping, let's call it that. And like everybody that's an outdoorsman or does outdoor activities and likes to adventure a little bit, we all gravitate towards the let's say crossover through full size pickup range. And everyone just has their own taste on what they like, what looks good to them. And I recently had a conversation with a friend of mine who just got a new pickup truck. They went full size with a Ford F-150.
Raptor?
I think it's the FX4 version, which is their sport kind of off-road model. But we were talking about how the new Bronco has the right idea, and this new Subaru take, I think, is on the same pathway that the Bronco is taking. Now, I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about the Bronco, but the Bronco has this package called the Sasquatch package, where for $4,000, I'm sorry, on any model in their line. So from the baseline all the way to the top of the line, you can add an off-road package: skid plates, big tires, big knobby tires, tow hooks, kind of whatever makes your car look aggressive. Um, and I remember when I first saw that, I guess it was last spring now, when people were pre-ordering them. I said that's the great idea. That's what people should be doing
Mhm.
because you, me, for example, I have a Crosstrek Sport. It's fully loaded. It's got the all the bells and whistles on it, but it doesn't have big knobby tires. And I think it worked probably better than my Wrangler did in snow and in loose terrain. Um, but I do wish it had more aggressive tires and more aggressive, let's say, wheel wells, and just kind of a little
An
more
appearance thing.
aggressive stance. Yeah,
Yeah.
appearance. Functionality wise, I think the car's a goat and it goes anywhere. But I think what we're going to see is a big push to what Subaru's doing now with this, what they're going to call it the Wilderness Package, which I think they will. Um, I think we're going to see a big push in that direction. And it's funny that you mentioned that. I actually just saw that I always toyed with the idea of switching from a pickup truck and getting a Ford Ranger. The Ranger has a new package called the Tremor or something like that.
I think that's it. Yeah.
And my take, yeah, and it's the same idea. It's just like a super aggressive, almost like the Raptor type package where everything's just made to look a lot more aggressive, lifted a little bit, big tires. And to be completely honest with all our fans and listeners, you you honestly don't need all the bells and whistles to have an off roader.
No.
I promise you, you know, I've I've been in 2 feet of snow and just rolled right around people in my little hatchback I had for quite a few years.
Yeah.
Um, just because I knew how to drive in snow. That's worth mentioning too. But cars are fun, like all the toys we like, and appearance packages and whatnot. I think that's the way that a lot of these companies are going to go, and I'm all for it.
No, I think that's a very good point. I, we like to think that an all-terrain vehicle and an off-road vehicle, a truck of some sort, is the holy grail of outdoor vehicles, right? Like something that you could take camping. My first Subaru was the Subaru Impreza hatchback, right? So stock, nothing on it, and where we used to fish a lot, there are some bombed out roads and they're just dirt roads with massive muddy holes in them. And this
Mhm.
thing tackled those roads like there was nothing wrong with it. I remember there was a blizzard the first winter that I had that car, and I was driving um, back from work. And I was on the highway, and I'm next to a woman in I want to say it was a Lexus, what is 470? It's like the Toyota Land Cruiser version of the Lexus. And she was having trouble driving. Like she kept spinning out and spinning out and spinning out. And here I am just kind of putzing along her in my tiny little Subaru and having no problems at all. I didn't skid out. I didn't have, massive amounts of snow coming down, and they hadn't, done anything to the road yet. And I had no problems at all. And I just was laughing a little bit. And I said, knowing what it is, how to drive is half the battle, right? Like the other half is having a vehicle that's capable of it. And um, Subaru, I think, gets a lot of things right. The coolness factor, I don't think is necessarily there. I love the new Ford Ranger. I couldn't justify spending that much for a pickup truck. Once you start to add in four-wheel drive, once you start to add in some of the extra features, you start to say, why am I doing this, right? Yeah, okay, great. You start at 19,000, but once you start adding in everything else, you're looking at spending $40,000 on a small
Yeah.
pickup truck. And then you say, okay, well, if I'm going to spend $40,000 on this, why don't I just spend 50 on an F-150, F by
Raptor.
A4? Yeah, and then
Yeah.
and then when you do that, you're like, well, let me just spend $10,000 more on a brand new Raptor
Hmm.
because it's all fake money anyway, right? Not
That's
I'm just
true.
saying that's something that goes through your head. I don't necessarily think that way. I think that's kind of insane.
No.
Um,
But with all incentive, you can get into a full size F-150 FX4 for under 45 grand. And then for a fully loaded, let's say, which is the equivalent uh, Ranger. I forget what the model name is, but it's similar. It might be the FX4 as well. But you're looking at like 40 grand for that same exact car, and it's half the car. So it's like, why don't you just go with the F-150 at that point? It's
I Agree.
it's the car market's really they're playing with stuff here, and now Ford's putting out the mini truck finally, which me and you've been talking about for years, the Maverick. And
Yes.
once again, there's spy photos out, and I'm not a fan. I was excited about it at first, but now that I see what it's going to be,
Well, it's like the Bronco. I was super
I'm
excited for
sure.
the Bronco, and they missed the mark on it, in my opinion. I saw it on the highway the other day, and I said, this is it. This is the Bronco that
Yeah.
everyone has been so excited for, and I love the old Bronco. I love even the
Hmm.
'90s Broncos, man, like those
Yeah.
monsters, gas guzzlers. But like, this thing is not the Bronco that we wanted. I even the Sasquatch edition, it's not what I
No.
wanted. It's not what I'm not a big Ford guy. I'm not a big Chevy guy. I like cars in general. I like the ideas of cars. I like classic cars. And I love trucks. And it doesn't matter what it is. I just don't like it.
Yeah.
Uh,
We could talk about our cars shortly. My chief complaint with the Subaru Crosstrek, which I know a lot of adventure people enjoy, the Subarus and Crosstreks and Foresters, and I've recommended it to quite a few people actually. And this is people are shopping for Jeep Wranglers and even up to, let's say, a Toyota 4Runner, and they would ask me about this car, and I tell them, I was like, I get 37 miles to a gallon, and I've never worried about sliding out in snow. And I drive up in the middle of a blizzard to go snowboarding, where I drive out to down the shore to go surf during hurricanes, and there's never a concern in my head. Um, my
yeah,
only complaint was power, and me and you have talked about this, about
yeah.
how the get up and go power. It's like, I'm sure most people have driven a Honda Civic. It's like a Honda Civic without the VTEC. You just don't have that little extra oof to it. You
Oof.
get there.
Yeah.
Now, the new ones that are out now, they do have they added a turbo, so you can get the
On the
four
Crosstrek.
cylinder
Yeah,
turbocharged. Yeah.
I did see that.
So.
Now that's an added, um, an like an add-on, right? So that's a higher
Hmm.
model, if I remember correctly. The rumor is that the Wilderness Edition is going to have a souped-up engine. It should include that turbocharger, or I believe that's what they were saying. Um, but it's all just rumors at this point. We'll have to wait and see when they announce it. I did get an email from Subaru earlier today. Subaru did say a wild new Outback is coming. They do have a world premiere event on March 30th, and you can go on their website to sign up to see the first reveal of this new Outback. The pictures, you kind of get a little glimpse of some cool styling. You can tell it's definitely lifted. It looks like there are, I wouldn't call them off-road tires, but a little beefier tires on there, and they're Yokohama tires. So some very nice tires. You have Yokohama on yours, don't you?
I do.
They all come with them. I replaced mine when I needed new tires. I wish I stuck with the Yokohama. I thought that they were great tires in general.
Hmm.
But yeah, so if you're all interested in that, definitely uh, just check out Subaru's website and see, and then we'll link to some cool things on there as well. Um, I my I get a lot of slack, or crap, I'll say, for my Forester, right? It's kind of, for a while there, it was like we driving kind of like a minivan. It's not a real SUV. My first truck was a Chevy Blazer, and I hated it because, well, I loved it because it was super comfortable. I hated it because it wasn't
Oh,
reliable. It was broken all
not
the
at all.
time, and it had about, I think, average was 10 miles per gallon in gas, and that's horrendous. I mean, like, there's no reason in hell. But that thing could freaking had takeoff. It was a six-cylinder, like, beautiful freaking engine. Like, you could get up to speed in no time at all. And that truck, I saved my buddy. We were screwing around off-roading a little bit, and he had a souped-up Jeep Cherokee, and it was lifted, massive freaking tires on it, push bar, everything on it, crazy lights, and it was a little snowy, and he got about 3 feet onto this little trail and got stuck and just starts spinning and spinning and spinning. So we're young and stupid. We didn't have all the appropriate things for off-roading, and luckily we weren't anywhere that was super remote. We probably would have been fine getting him out. So I come up behind him on the trail and I basically just bumped him with my bumper and pushed him out. And my truck was completely stock Blazer, got him out of the sticky mess. So, um, but the Forester doesn't have that kind of, I don't know, like the bumper is not very hardy. It's definitely plasticky. It's, but I do everything in it, man. Like I got my fishing rods in there almost all summer long. They're my fly rods in there right now, right?
Yeah.
Laying across the back, and I got the roof rack last year that I put the canoe on, and I never have any problems with that. I've been averaging roughly 32 miles per gallon, which is great. Around town, sometimes dips down into the teens, but high teens, like 19. Um, I'll deal with it. Uh, I'm, not driving too much in this modern world, so is
Yeah.
what it is. Um, but yeah, if I were you, I'd try and see what's coming out with this Wilderness Edition, man. I know you're up for a new one this summer, so hopefully they do I know you don't want an Outback, but
If it
worth an
looks nice
option.
enough, I might. And you never know. Maybe it will be out. I think they're doing more rapid production now on some of these new vehicles. Like I said, the Ford Maverick. They said it's already in production. They have like spy photos that weren't even they weren't even camouflaged. It was just the truck itself, and that's because it's ready for production. And I think a lot of companies are doing that now because you know they they realize that they got to get things to production quicker because so many people are around and ready to get into new vehicles.
Yep.
And a lot of these cars are produced in North America. People don't realize that, so they can produce it here, not have to put it on a storage, shipping container and get it here. Um, yeah, it's huge.
Yeah,
You know,
looking at cars is a slippery slope, man.
yeah,
I was looking at the Tundra. I was like, man, I had entered to win that Black Rifle Coffee Company Tundra, and I think it was I forget what kind of bass boat it was, like a nitro or something like that. And um, obviously didn't win because I would be telling everybody if I did. But I was like, damn, I lost. Like, let me just go look and see how expensive they are. And it's like, you don't just want to stock, every run of the mill Tundra, right? Like, if you do a
hmm
Tundra, you want to do it right. You want to get the TRD. You want to like I love the freaking matte green one that like only comes in one special edition, and like when you add everything
yeah,
into it, it was like 60 something $1,000, and I'm like, well, for like
yeah.
ten thousand
It's
dollars more, you go down that road. So I don't know.
yeah. My neighbor actually has his work truck's an F-150, and then his personal truck is a the Chevy Colorado, the one that's hooked up. I think it's called the ZR4. Um, and it's
Yeah,
funny to me because usually if you're Ford, you stick with Ford, for both. But he has two young boys and they have dirt bikes, and every weekend they're loading up with dirt bikes, the mountain bikes, the fishing gear, you throw hunting gear back there. They're always flying down the street, going wherever adventure they're going next, and it's adventure vehicles, man. It's choose your poison, you know.
well, but for what we do, right, is I'll say we're young professionals, right, even though we're kind of on the cusp of that of maybe not being young professionals
Yeah,
anymore. But you don't. This is our everyday vehicle. We
yeah,
use it constantly. Do you really want to have something that's uncomfortable, something that's just for off-roading? You kind of like you have to balance that once again and say like, all right, it's got to be great on gas mileage because I'm going to use it on road trips, right? And a lot of the places that we go, if we're driving down the shore, that's an hour and a half, depending upon where we're going down the shore. If we're going up into the mountains, you're talking about, depending upon where we're going, 45 minutes. I'm going to Lake George, 3 hours. Like, you don't want to be sitting in an uncomfortable car that's lifted, that has swampers on it, that's just loud,
loud.
obnoxious, bouncing
Yeah,
all over the place. Kind of like, the Wrangler's so incredibly fun, and you have firsthand knowledge in this, and I know it because I had my good friend had one, and you're bounding along on the highway and it's just obnoxious. Like you just don't you don't want to deal with it. And ladies and gentlemen, we have Joey McCormack ready to join us here. And speaking of Jeep owners, that's a Joey McCormack. So give him a minute here to join, and we will cut
Yeah,
here and go forward. But Bray?
yeah. I was gonna jump into the Wrangler stuff.
Oh, go.
Um, it was a great young man's car. I would never trade that experience for my life. Flying around in that car, and but it was loud. Early
Yeah,
days of having cell phones was tough,
yeah,
because I mean, I always had a soft top on, even with a hard top, because I had a hard top too. The car was just loud. So we're talking on cell phones, you hear the wind noise. Joey will talk about it too in a minute, but it's and it's not big. So even the two doors back then, because mine was in early '90s, it it I can't fit a surfboard in it. It was hanging out the back, even a shortboard. So
that's how I damaged my first board, man. It was in the back of that Jeep, and
yeah,
the wind
you're
hit
right.
it, and it got crunched underneath the seat, and had a bunch of different dings in it that went right through that had to get repaired. This was like my third trip down the shore with that board.
Kook of the day, kook of the day. That's all I'm
Yeah.
gonna say.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joey McCormack, as I promised. Joe, we're talking adventure vehicles, and we are landing on the Jeep Wrangler. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, overall, would you say that your Jeep, you have a four-door SE, is it?
I don't know the model. Is it 2014 four-door Sport SE? I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, Joe, point the camera down a little bit. Half your head's missing.
Oh boy. Ooh, is that better? Wait.
Yeah, that's better. When you lean in, it kind of cuts off part of your face. There you go. There you look at that beautiful hair, man. I'm jealous.
It's a
Oh,
mane, boys. It's a mane.
so
Yeah.
you have this Jeep. Now you've been traveling obviously down to South Carolina and all over the place in it. Brian, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
No,
See your
you
mouth.
go. I was gonna ask Joe, because I mean we could talk about that too, about the driving around, but Joe's a perfect person to talk to this about. He had a taco in Tacoma,
I
for those who
did.
don't know that, and now he has a four-door Wrangler
Well,
for
I got the
comparison.
Wrangler for my daughter, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
I got it for my daughter.
Oh yeah.
The taco is where it's at. Toyota's hands down.
But do you feel like we were
Hands
talking
down.
about it, but we were talking about how we feel as though, and you hear a lot about it being underpowered. It's a great all around vehicle, should last you forever, but a lot of guys are moving away from the taco,
Yeah.
and they're doing
I
so for
have
many reasons.
yanked with that. Here's the story. With the Tacoma I had, and I only had the four banger with the manual transmission. We had a blizzard here. It was like 3.5 feet of snow, and a guy down the street had a Tundra, and he, for some reason, didn't know how to correctly put it into four-wheel drive, and he got that thing swamped. I yanked that thing out with the Tacoma with no problem. Just anybody saying they're underpowered, just
Yeah.
What about getting up to speed on the highway? I mean, if you have a
But
flew.
with the stick shift, because Chris, my friend Chris Kirk had the same truck. He had the long bed though. I think it was the short.
I
But he
went
had
to
the
long
same
bed.
thing. Oh, long bed. He had the same thing, and it was because it was a manual. He was able to get it up to speed, and I think he's able to low gear it to pull things with the shifter. So maybe Joe has a point here, but I don't
Dude,
know if
that
you
yeah,
can get. Can you
that
even
four
get the newer
banger
ones
flew. Yeah, you can get the new ones manual.
with manual? Oh, okay. I thought they
You can get
discontinued
the
that like
six
everybody
cylinder
else.
with the manual. Nope, still have it. My buddy's about to buy a new one, with the manual, fully loaded, six cylinder, all manual transmission.
now
Toyotas. Technically, me and you have Toyotas, Mike.
well, that's a
Can't beat them.
partnership with them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's well, from his mouth to your ears, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
Firsthand knowledge. Um, but
Well, the thing is, if Toyota ever released the real FJ40 again, it would blow Jeep out of the water.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
I've been in those things in situations I can't even. We should have never made it out of and
in
get out
Colorado,
of
right?
just around here off roading. My buddy's got a 46 and he's taking it all through the country. Uh, Moab. He's off road everywhere in that thing. The thing's a tank. We used to go to Assateague Island and with his 46 just winch people out all day long. Just fun though to get stuck.
Yeah, I want to get the Island Beach State Park beach pass so that I can take my Subaru on the beach to fish.
Make sure to deflate those tires, boys.
Ooh, well, there's a list of things that you do need. They're handing out permits now so that if you want it, I was like, I want to do it so bad.
The only key is all you have to do if you have 4-wheel drive is just deflate the tires. If you don't deflate your tires, you're screwed. You literally take them to 18 psi and you're fine.
Yeah, we could do
That's
that.
it.
That's not hard.
The people who get stuck are all the yahoos who didn't deflate their tires and they get in that soft sand and just like and you just get bedded down. As long as your tires are deflated. Like if you ever go to Acetique, when you pull on, they have like air pump stations for that exact reason. So going in, you deflate the tire, coming back out, you fill them up. So, and there's signs everywhere: deflate your tires, deflate your tires. People don't do it.
No, of course not. It's like those videos of those young guys that just get their licenses and they're driving on the beach wherever the heck they are, and they're in like Mercedes trucks or Lexus trucks, and they're stuck down where like, in the soft sand and start shifting right into that water and somehow get swamped.
Or they drive into the water like idiots, like not realizing the salt water will just tear the paint off your car. Like you gotta wash it as soon as you're done. Just take it out and get it washed.
When I was one of the times I was in Costa Rica, I was surfing. I can name drop, doesn't matter for this one. I was surfing Marbella, which is a black sand beach, and we were
Marbella.
We were the only people on the beach surfing the spot. Me and a few of my friends, and it was a really good day actually. And this G-Wagon pulls up, completely murdered out. I'm talking blacked out, even windshield to the point where you can see who was in it. And out jumps this pasty gringo, and he like pulled onto the beach, like didn't deflate tires or anything. I remember thinking to myself, like, what is this guy doing? And he gets out and he has a brand new, completely like pure white, like Channel Islands at the time. This is 10 years ago now, but and comes out and surfs. But I remember thinking to myself, like, he didn't deflate his tires and he has a G-Wagon, brand new in Central America. Like, first of all, that thing is going to get broken into, and second of all, it's going to get stuck. And I wasn't there when he got out of the water, but I always thought about it. I was like, man, I wonder if he got stuck in a G-Wagon on that beach where there's no one. There was no one there. Like we went all the way down the beach to surf our own little beach break spot, and he drove all the way down to surf with us. And just it was so funny, man.
It wasn't Tom
Kook
Brady.
of the day, like you said. It wasn't Tom Brady.
Tom Brady's far from a kook. His dancing skills are just below par. That's what makes him kooky. When you see him,
he does go to the beach town that I go to, and I will not name that town. And
well,
few people do.
You Google that, you'll find that out. I'm sure.
Yeah, you'll find it.
Quite a few people go there.
Leave Streaver goes there. A few others. It's kind of funny. Of all the towns,
it really has picked up. It's because of all the yoga stuff. Like a lot of I've seen that there's a lot of wives down there, and they're doing, a lot of these famous yoga spots. Even the yoga place in town here, they do a trip there. And Donna goes, "Hey, isn't this the place Brian goes to?" I'm like, "Oh shit, yeah, it is. Look at that." Yeah,
so funny. Good for Enrique. And then he gets he's getting more people coming his way.
Make that money, baby.
Yeah.
Well, that was a tantalizing conversation about cars, and cars frustrate the ever living heck out of me.
Look,
so it's
if I had to get any car I wanted right now, like the tow or anything like that, it would be a Tundra, hands down, or a Tacoma. I mean,
I was
Toyota.
just saying, I love the Tundra TRD, the matte green.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, there's a reason Toyota sponsors all these events, and most of the guys who fish are pulling their boats with Tundras. I mean, they're not just doing that because of the sponsors. I mean,
no, it's a good truck.
Bulletproof.
Yeah,
absolutely bulletproof.
So Joe, you broke your skunk a little bit this past weekend after we'll say skunk because you had a bad experience the weekend before, 2 weekends ago.
Oh yeah, but I caught a lot of fish the week before too, though.
Well, you did, but I'm saying you I don't know. you had a
I
little
know what
bit of
you're
a bad
saying.
taste in your mouth, so you had to get
Oh,
back out.
it was disgusting. Disgusting
You
taste.
crushed it, man. So you went down to the Potomac. Um, in Were you in the Maryland side, or did you go out into Virginia? How far from where you are?
We were
Well,
north,
again,
so we were up DC, up by DC.
okay.
So we were north. Yeah, they're biting like they were
So the
last week, and just
bite is on up in Maryland. It is on here in Jersey. For those of you who are bass fishermen, the guys are posting that this is just absolute crushing it out there. Um,
it's
what
pretty
was the
much throughout the
technique?
country.
What's
I
the
mean,
technique, man?
this weekend, I mean, you couldn't go wrong with much. Throwing a crankbait, throwing finesse, you couldn't go wrong. Crankbaits, finesse, rattle trap, lipless cranks. You couldn't. If you found the fish, there wasn't much they wouldn't bite if you got the bait in front of them. They're pre-spawned, so they're just just eating like you wouldn't believe. We weighed one fish we caught that was 12. It was like 12 and 3/4. And that should be like a pound fish. It was 2 pounds. That's how much they're eating. It was a 2 pound fish that was just over 12 inches. Like just had this big fat belly.
Yeah.
So the bite's on. The guy I went out with, Jesse, he caught a huge one. It was probably not 4 or 5 pounder, which has been pretty good size for out in the Potomac lately. I don't think we put anything in the boat that, besides that one that was 12, that was 2. Nothing was under 2 pounds. Everything we boated was 2 pounds or better. So another good bag. I mean, the weekend before my bag would have been around 15 pounds. This one was probably around 14, 15 again. So that's decent for the Potomac.
Now, did you
And
use
this
this as
weekend,
an opportunity to prep for Santee Cooper?
a little bit.
Yeah.
Santee Cooper's going to be completely
Wow.
different. I mean, it's swamp living. I mean, cypress trees, fishing cypress trees, and a lot like what the Wakama look like. It's what
Yeah.
it's going to be like. But Santee Cooper's too. It's a huge. When they say Santee Cooper, it's a huge area that it encompasses. Encompasses 2 major lakes, Moultrie and Marion, and then the Cooper River, which runs all the way to the ocean. So hundreds of square miles of fishing. Um, a lot of cypress trees, alligator, snakes. Like Brendan was sending me pictures of crazy snakes and gators out there. But those fish, I'm predicting a boater is going to weigh 30 pounds. I wouldn't be surprised to see heavier. That's for 5 fish.
Yeah, you're saying that last week, and I wouldn't be surprised either. I think you were saying they're pretty close to being on beds down there, if not on beds.
And plus, it's a full moon Saturday night, so they say they really start spawning around the full moon. And they say your best time. There's guys out there that say your best time to catch a PB is when the full moon falls on the 27th.
Really?
Ooh, the 20, yeah. Tactical bass and those guys, and they're pretty good fishermen. They claim that that's you get a full moon falling around that time of the month. For some reason, the bigs come out.
Yeah. So I went down to the local pond here, or I'll call it my lake. You called it a pond, I think, last week.
Sorry.
It's all right. You're making fun of it for the size. We call it a lake here. Um, you started seeing the outlines of where the bass were going to be bedding, right? So all along the beach section, there were just like you could tell where fish had started to swirl up the sand a little bit and the dirt a little bit. I would say they're obviously not on bed yet. It's been nights still pretty freaking cold. It was about 66, I think today. It was a beautiful day.
Nice day, yeah.
But you're pretty dead on if they're doing that here where you are, the Potomac, and then sure enough, down in the Carolinas, the bite is on.
Yeah, they're not on beds up here yet. Not that I've
No.
seen. I haven't caught a bedfish. Once your water gets around like 68 to 70, I would say
Now,
they're
for
there. They're doing it.
For those who are unaware, can you tell me a little bit about what does it mean about fish being on bed? I think that's
They're making babies, so they're
There you go.
spawning. So what happens is the male bucks will find beds, go up in the shallows, and then the female bass are always bigger, much bigger than the males. Will pick their male, and they'll make magic happen. They'll lay their eggs in that bed, and then the male protects them, like fry garters they call them. So the female, after they're born, will kind of go back and do their thing, and the male will stay around the bed and protect the bed as a fry garter. But when you have a male and female on the bed, anything you throw into that bed or anything they perceive as a threat, they're going to either eat or try to chase away. Especially like bluegills or brim, they hate them around their beds. And so what they do pre-spawn is they eat like crazy to get their energy up to do the love dance. So they just gorge themselves on food, like absolutely gorge themselves to the point where they're just, for example, in Texas, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Somebody caught a lunker at 13 pounds, I think it was, or 12 or 13 pounds. In Texas, they have this lunker program. So every fish over, I forget the size, the biologists take a sample of it, and sometimes they keep them so they can reproduce with that bigger stock to make bigger fish. And the one fish was 12 pounds, and since that was caught before last year pre-spawn, at pre-spawn that fish was 14 pounds. So it lost 2 pounds after
Wow.
spawning. So that gives you an idea how much they eat and what kind of energy they burn when they do their dance. So
That's good, and I appreciate you kind of giving the breakdown on that, because a lot of people who may not be big fishermen like that, like for trout, they call it the reds, right? They lay those little eggs into the
they
areas
make
that
good
they're
bait.
spawning. Yeah, so when you're fly fishing too, this time of year, right? Like you can throw little egg-looking flies, and everything will eat it. It is delicacy for everything, and that's why also a lot of spinner, fishermen, traditional rod and reel guys, they'll put those little salmon eggs that are scented on a hook and just toss it out there, and
Well,
everything will go for it.
I can tell you in Erie what they do for steelhead rainbow trout. They catch them, they'll take their eggs. If somebody catches a good one and they have eggs, and I forget they call it skag or something, and they'll keep the eggs, and it's like a craft up there. Like Sarah, Joe's wife's dad does this. They take the eggs and they take like a little piece like netting, and they'll like get the eggs in the netting and tie it so it's like a bait, and you fish with those, and they demolish it. They eat their own eggs. I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah.
this is the time of year to be fishing. Springtime, pre-spawn, spawn, and even after post-spawn, like right afterwards, they'll eat a ton, and then you get to that summertime where it gets a little tougher and hotter.
Yeah. Well,
So
I'll
from
be out
now
on
on,
Thursday.
so
I'm ready.
usually this time of year, in normal years, where this year the South had a cold spell, which they usually don't get. Normally by this time, the fish are spawning. If not, they're in the second or third wave, almost getting finished spawning. But this year, with the cooler temperatures they had down there, it has delayed the spawn. Like the Bass Masters just finished up today on Lake Pickwick, which is in Alabama, and they still weren't spawning, and they were quite surprised by that, how late this year and they still aren't really doing it. Some fish started coming up today at the end of the tournament, but they say the range is 65 degrees to like 72, and there's where they really start going up to spawn. Probably closer to 68. Once you get that magical temperatures, really start seeing them on the beds. And then the other magical temperatures, like water temps from like 54 to that range, because that's like where they'll really start eating and start moving up from their winter habitat and just start gorging on bait.
So for someone who's going out, let's say like me here in Jersey, going out Thursday midday, is the goal to use, like you were saying, pretty much anything, crankbaits,
Moving baits that match
moving
the
baits,
forage.
and then where am I targeting them? Shallows, kind of that mid
Points.
column.
So if you have an idea where they're going to spawn at, like if you find spawning areas, they'll usually set up like, so most spawning areas are bays with sandy bottoms or rocky bottoms, and then the bays will have those points. You'll find points in the bay. They usually set up there. Coming in from the deep water, they'll set up at the points or off the points, waiting to move up. But basically, what they're doing is they're moving from, like, let's say we're on a river system and lake system. So lakes here, rivers here. They'll move from the deeper parts to the points towards the shallows, getting ready to go into the shallows. So like your lake, where everybody say safe, just for instance, there spawning where everybody sunbathes at, in that
Yeah.
area. You would want to find kind of a point near there, or like the drop off near there, and they should be setting up there. So like where we were
Brian's
catching
looking
them on the
like he wants to
Potomac.
go. Look at that.
So where we were catching Potomac, we know where the spawning bay is. Some of us know where this one spawning bay is. And it's a bigger bay. And then at the entrance of the bay, there's this point. And the point has water coming, but it's also got to stop where the breakwater stops. And there's a deeper hole. And they're just sitting all in there, just waiting, getting ready to go up the shallows and spawn. So.
All right, well, you
You
heard it
find them.
here, everyone. Joe, that's invaluable information. I think it's
But points can
incredibly
also
helpful.
be, but like people say like points, you think of like points, like land points, but also underwater points. Like if you have navionics, it will show like the underwater points with those lines,
Yeah.
like they'll set up there too. Like any natural kind of point.
Well,
People say
Navionics
points.
hasn't mapped my lake, unfortunately. So that's
I mean, we could write them a letter and tell them
we should. Well, I don't want. I think because it's a private lake, they don't. A lot of the
that might.
lakes around here, they don't. But I did find the Lunker Lake here in Jersey. We drove by it. We were headed out into PA the other day, and I was like, "Holy cow, that's it, man!" I never looked for it. You and I had talked about it a couple times. It's out by the Gap, and I think that's on the list, man. That's on the list on the canoe.
I would be going there and just bombing. I mean, this time of
Yeah.
year, if it's not far from your house. Is it a big lake?
It's not really that big. At least it doesn't look that big.
Okay.
And you know what's crazy to me is, I once again
I think
always
I've
intelligence,
seen video of that lake.
but not many people talk about it. Like you look on these forums, no one's talking about fishing there, and it's prominent. I'm not going to name drop it because that's not what we do. But you go on the Fish and Wildlife website, it's prominently named there as being the Lunker Lake or one of the Lunker Lakes in New Jersey. And it's, maybe as a crow flies 30 minutes from here. So it's not bad, right? Like it's doable. I mean, where we fly fish is, going up to about an hour away sometimes, right? Depending upon which stretch of that we do. So I would gladly do a half hour. When I go to the Muskie Lake that I like, that I have to hit now that it's starting to be that shoulder season once again. That is an hour and 15 minutes away, and it's technically closer. So Lunker Lake is definitely on that list.
I
Man.
drive, for me to go to Potomac, I drive an hour. It could be anywhere from an hour and 15 minutes to 4 hours, depending on traffic.
Yeah.
And people consider that my home. I guess it is my home river. I mean, I always thought more of the Upper Bay. That's 40 minutes away, but people associate me more with the Potomac because I guess I'm out there more. And
Now here's the
anybody's
question.
going to fish the Potomac is probably one of the hardest bodies in the water.
Well, you were saying that the Potomac may have been destroyed, right? Have we've talked about that a little bit. You talked about it earlier in the podcast. Was this last trip any indication that maybe it's coming back after the issues that they're having?
It's tough to say because years prior, there were just so many good fish and you're just catching them so much. And it just seems like last year, it was so off. I mean, crazy off. I mean, when you're seeing tournaments with boaters winning with like 3 fish, there's something way wrong. And the weights, I mean, you can see from other tournaments, the weights have declined. It's kind of tough. Like, for what we caught last weekend, I would have thought we would have caught a whole lot more. And I still, in the past 2 weekends, I've caught good bags there, but I've heard from at least 4 or 5 other guys who were out in the same days, not catching anything.
Yeah.
Well, with the Potomac, you got to remember the Potomac is surrounded by a lot of urban area. I mean,
yeah,
a lot. DC, I mean, that's a major metropolitan area. And you'll see a lot of trash in there. Especially when you start going more up north, there's almost like a line you come to where you start seeing all the trash and this and that. and there was this sewage running in there. They found a lot ran into there, and there's that huge trash island. I sent you that article I linked to. It's on my Facebook. Something last year was off, and it wasn't the amount of people out there, because the Potomac gets, the kayak thing's a new thing, but the kayakers don't get out into the Potomac's a huge river. They don't get out into the big river system. They usually stay back in Man and Woman Creek, or they'll go out to Mallows Bay, or these other creeks, because you just can't take a kayak out. I mean, I guess you could if you have a death wish, or I so
We'll do it in the canoe, man. I don't know.
back in like Man and Woman, that was one thing last year. Back in Man and Woman, we'd be out there and it'd be like 400 kayakers just filling the place up. So back there, yeah, to me that was kind of an issue, because like, God, there's so many kayakers out there. It was mind-boggling at times. But like I said, the Potomac, with DC there, major metropolitan area, a lot of stuff gets into that water, and I think there's something that happened that definitely had some effect on the fishing last year.
Yeah. Well,
Because like even like the James River, I caught at the regionals 200 fish. Like, no, I'm not kidding you, 200 bass. That's how healthy the place was. But they were all 12 inchers. Just they're going to grow up to the big ones. Like, I had one day like that last year in the Potomac where I caught like 40 fish and every one was under 13 inches. But it was just very, very strange last year, and a lot of other people I've heard say the same thing. Like, there's something there that's causing this. And I don't think it really had much more fishing traffic last year. Maybe
I'm
a
not
little bit
necessarily
more.
just saying fishing traffic. I think when you talk about remote waters, that's a problem. Like places where Brian
Yeah.
and I fly fish, when you increase that traffic even by 10%, I think that causes a significant issue, right? When you talk about structure changing, that their whole habitat has changed overnight, and in shallow water, when we're talking in some pools that are like 2 to 3 feet deep, it now goes down to 6 inches. That's detrimental to the
Oh yeah.
environment for the fish. Now, when you're talking about also in some of these places, there are mountain streams near residential areas. People are doing, landscaping. They're, putting fertilizer down. That's changing the pH levels in the water. Not to get preachy on environmental things, but like there's other things definitely that are going on a major river system like, the Potomac. That's a whole, like, you're dealing with cities, multi-states. You're talking about a whole plethora of problems. You have runoff from other waterways, the small little tributaries in there. So I could imagine there being significant problems with that. I do. I wanted to ask Brian a quick question. He did. There you go. So Brian, you did see. We were talking a little bit about the Passaic River, right? And I think Passaic River, to me, it's not as vast as the Potomac, but it has similar problems to the Potomac, right? Now you went. Did we go? Did we go last year before the lockdown to the Passaic? I know I went during the lockdown.
Can't remember.
And in those spots where we used to catch bass constantly, so I went in the heat of summer. It was nothing. And I don't think it was a pressure issue. I think that there's other things going on. There's a lot more construction going along the Passaic River there.
Roadway construction. Remember, so like they were constantly testing it because all the super sites in New Jersey, and the sections that we fish are actually not part of the super site areas. So they don't test any of the everyone always says Agent Orange, but that's not really what's in it. But they don't see any of those heavy metals in that water up where we fish, but down
Like
river,
Garfield.
let's say, yeah, even a little closer, right? It rolls from let's say from the Little Fall, the Little Falls, the actual falls themselves, down is where things start to get a little more, they test heavier. And it makes me think that, I know that the Potomac had similar issues with the heavy metals and the super sites dumping in there through, let's say through the industrial age of America. But they did a big push to clean them out. So I wonder, like you said, if the recent construction had something to do with it. I mean, almost every roadway in New Jersey right now has some kind of heavy construction going on. So all that debris and soot and whatever is going into the waterways. I'm sure it's the same down south. Especially specific waterways like Lake the Passaic, or let's say the I don't know, what's another big river in
Hackensack,
Jersey? Hackensack, yeah.
Raritan.
I wonder what happened. I wonder what happened to the stripers in Hackensack, or the the big brown trout in the Raritan. I bet they had issues this year. I'm curious. It sucks. It really does, because I like Joey said. When I think of Joey fishing for bass, I think about him fishing the Potomac, and it sucks that the waterway's taking a hit.
It's just weird because there was there's definitely, the Potomac was always known as like a world-class fishery, and last year it just didn't show out, and it could be just a fluke year,
Yeah.
It could really be a fluke year. The 2 times now you got to take into the fact that spring. I'm fishing the best time to be out there right now. The past 2 weekends has been good, but like I said, I've heard from a lot of guys who are out there. They weren't getting them. I'll get messages like, "Oh, where were you catching them? What were you catching them on?" They're just not catching them. And we fished a few spots where they should be, and they weren't there. One thing we did see was a lot of goldfish. That was the first I've ever seen, like a massive goldfish. Like, it scared the shit out of me because it surfaced. This thing was like this big. I'm like, "What the hell was that?" The guy's like, "Oh, that's a goldfish." I'm like, "Jeez." Yeah.
I think they tell you to kill them if you can get them, right?
Yeah, I was trying to snag the thing to kill it because we found this spot, and there's just, you could see on the side scan, the front scan, just tons of shad, all different sizes. Like the shad was like, one shad was like this big. My buddy snagged, but all different size, and there were all these catfish eating them, and then there was like the goldfish, and that goldfish was just
snagging
so huge.
shad or snagging the goldfish?
The shad, because what happens is if you throw a bait out there and you're reeling it in, and it looks like a shad, they'll school up on it, like thinking it's another shad, and you'll snag them. And he snagged one. 14 inches. It's huge.
Well, they're about to run up the old Delaware.
But the goldfish was just demolishing them. Like, you could see it like just surfacing, and this thing was so fat, like it couldn't get out of the water. It was like the belly was just coming up. Like, that's what happens when you release your goldfish in the waterways. They get effing humongous.
I would love to catch one.
Dude, you would have freaked out. You would have freaked out and been trying to catch anything. It was huge. Like, it startled me because I didn't realize they had that problem there. Like, I've never seen them out there. I've always heard people say they're there. And I saw this big thing that was orange come up. I'm like, what the hell was that? There's no orange fish in here. It was like blood red almost color. And lo and behold, it was a ginormous goldfish.
So funny.
Yeah. Well, something like that. And if you see the size of it, you can imagine how much it's eating.
I got to Google that size. I got to look up goldfish in the Potomac and see what I can find.
Just Google goldfish in river, like people let go. Monsters. Because they say goldfish will grow as big as the area
their environment. Yeah. But they're like, we liken them to almost being like carbs, right? So when you go and you see, we'll choose any pond in any town here in New Jersey, and there's carp. Sometimes you look in the pond and you're looking at the carp and you're like, is that a goldfish in there? And they are some crazy color, and they're not like the grass carp. They're not like some of the other ones, but they do look like goldfish. But I never seen one that's been so massive that it has taken me aback, I'll say. Brian, did you find out if that pond by you has carp?
Yes, they have carp and bass.
Okay, you ready to share screen real quick? Sorry to interrupt you, Brian.
No worries.
Let me do this. I could. There it is. Share screen. Let me blow this up. Hold on 1 second.
Oh man,
that's crazy.
Do you see that thing?
Yeah.
You see this one? This is what it. That's humongous.
Yeah.
What's a
It
koi
startled
fish?
the ever living hell out of me. Like I couldn't believe it. All right, let me stop sharing.
It's so funny.
But you said, Brian, they do have carp and bass.
Yeah, they have carp and bass. I caught a little smallmouth on a fly when I went there one morning. I just was like, I want to see if there's any fish in here. I always see kids fishing in there, and I never see them catch anything. But I when I went running there one time, I could see the carp from from the track, and then you would see them jumping for bugs, the bass. So I don't know how big they would get, but the pond's been there forever, and I don't think they drain it. So
Let's go.
who knows?
When you're free to go carping on a fly.
Yeah, let's
do it.
try it out. It'd be fun.
These things are mean.
Yeah, and they get big.
I'm game. It just looks so much fun, man. I've gotten to a point. I said to Brian yesterday, like trout fishing. I love trout fishing, but I'm losing my patience. Like when you have a skunk for so long and the weight of the world feels like it's on your shoulders, and you're like, I just need to break this damn skunk. Well, that's where I am with trout fishing because I have not caught a trout in a few months, and I've been going a handful of times, not as much as I'd like to because I've been busy with other things, but using the right stuff, matching the hatch, using stealth and everything like that. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. It's getting warm out. I'm going after other species and I'm ready to do this. So when you're ready, Brian, I'm ready. This weekend, even we can take the canoe out and go to the lake and do some bassing if you're interested.
This is the time to be doing the bassing, boys. You're gonna get nice weather this weekend.
Ooh, baby. But I think that's about it, gents. We are coming up to an hour of filming. I appreciate both of your time.
Always.
Joe's
Thanks for joining us, Joseph.
Yeah, Joe. Hopefully you enjoyed your crappie.
Pat for us.
Oh, dude, so good. Steak was better. Literally, last minute was like, "Oh, we're going to Bluestone." I'm like,
"All right,
I'm in."
Yeah, I can't complain about that one. Well, everyone, thanks for listening,
all right, boys.
and we'll talk later this week.